What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today we are talking template teams, right? So I've done this kind of video pre-season. I've done one in the last international break, and I thought now was a good time to revisit it. The normal stuff, the team selection, the game week preview and stuff will all be next week, but today I'm going through the most popular team, defenders, midfielders, forwards, goalkeeper, etc. But also talking about whether they should stay in our team, when we should be looking to get rid, and who maybe the alternatives are as well. And obviously whether or not even having a template team is a bad thing. So if you enjoy this type of video, please do give it a like. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. We are so close to 120k now. Please do hit it if you haven't already and you are enjoying my content. Otherwise, let's jump into it. Okay, so before we start talking about the team, a few little admin things. So one, I know the mustache is looking awful, right? And every time I do Movember, I think it's for a great cause. You should just do it, and I do it, and then I regret it halfway through. Not for obviously doing something for charity, that's great, but how awful I look more than usual. But it's for a good cause. If you haven't already donated, there is a link in the description below. Already got my 10 kilometers done for today before recording this, and I'm doing that every day through November, as well as going sober too, or teetotal. So if you want to donate, link in the description below. I've chosen 3-4-3 because it's the most popular formation every single season. You might play in a different formation, right? It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this video. And the ownership is obviously at the time of recording, but also it's overall ownership, not top 10k. So as we get further into the season, top 10k becomes more relevant because there's more active managers. They're the ones you're trying to beat. But right now, there's still quite a few active managers. And to be honest, the overall ownership and the overall players that are in this team is very, it's very, very similar to the top 10k, right? There's hardly any differences at all. So let's jump into it. Martinez, there's probably no use worrying about what goalkeeper we've got to a certain extent, whether it's Ryan, McCarthy, Martinez. I personally think Martinez probably still is under 5, probably the best option. Once Sheffield United come into some good fixtures, you could look at Ramsdale. He's dropped in price now. But I think Aston Villa I've said this a few times now, have just looked good for a while defensively. They are keeping their numbers down in terms of shots conceded, expected goals conceded, and that kind of thing. And I think that he looks really good. Now, he's kind of up the table a bit like Fabianski because he saved the penalty. And that is massive for a goalkeeper because not only do you obviously get the penalty points, but you also pretty much always get 3 bonus points as well. So it's a pretty big thing for a goalkeeper. But I do think he's the best, right? I still think if you want a Leeds defender, you go outfield. If you want a Brighton defender or goalkeeper, you go for Lamptey. I feel like for some teams, there's just better defenders than there are goalkeepers. I don't necessarily think that is the case for Aston Villa. And so I think Martinez is a great shout. So 26.8%, no reason to rush to bring him in, break your team to bring him in, use a spare transfer. But if you're on a wild card, he'd probably be still where I would go. In defence, it's definitely being mixed up a little bit now. And obviously, some of these players have been high owned since the start, and they've come down a bit like Trent Alexander-Arnold. He would have been close to kind of 40-50% pre-season, I would have said. He's now 26.8. And he's one of those frustrating injuries, right? You never wish an injury on any player, of course. But when a player like that gets injured, that people are thinking about getting rid of, some are maybe still umming and ahhing, and then you get told he's out for 4 weeks, and it's just an easy transfer out. It just makes FPL a little bit boring in times like that, because now everyone can get rid of him. It's a bit like Harry Kane, right? I'm pretty confident I'm going to get rid. A lot of people want to keep him. Some are unsure. If he went and got injured on international break, it just makes it so easy just to get someone else in. So he is injured. So is it time to get rid? Probably. If he's out for 4 weeks, okay, international break means he wouldn't have played for 2 anyway. But he's going to miss 2 game weeks. Very expensive. Personally, right, if he was still fit, I think there's still an argument to keep him. I've got rid of him. I want to spend my money up front. If you're happy to stick with the strategy of having these big hitting defenders, though, I don't think you necessarily needed to have looked to get rid. Because I think Liverpool are still going to do well defensively. They've still got some good fixtures coming up. I can't imagine he's going this whole season without getting more assists than he already has, especially goals too. So the points will come at some point. It's just how long does it take? And I've talked about on other videos that last season Liverpool only had 2 clean sheets by game week 15. They're only in game week 8 now, and he only had I think it was 4 returns by game week 13. So the returns didn't all come at the start of last season either. But in the landscape of this season, got players like Ben Chilwell, who we'll talk about in a second, who are doing really well. There's a lot of attacking options, right? And we're going to talk about all them in a minute. And especially recently, people have been having like Salah. Now they're thinking about City midfielders and Spurs players. Very expensive and difficult to fit in with Trent as well. So for me, I think it's time. It's probably time to move him on if he's out for 4 weeks. Even if he's not, it probably is a good time, not necessarily, but not a bad time to get rid of him. And I think Chilwell is probably the number 1 option, unless you want to really, cut some money out of that. You could go to Cancelo as well for a similar price. He's about 0.5 million cheaper now. So moving on to Chilwell, So I spoke a lot, right? If you watch my pre-season videos, I didn't shut up about Chelsea. I didn't shut up about Chilwell to a certain extent, but obviously he was injured, so he wasn't a massive part of the conversation. But I kept saying, he's the one I want, he's the one I want. He's going to be nailed on, he's going to be the most attacking. Well, actually, Reece James is probably as attacking, but you still got that kind of thought in the back of your mind, is this going to be the week he's rotated? Is this going to be the week he's rotated? But he's a lot cheaper than Chilwell. I think Chilwell might have gone up to 6 million now. If not, he's 5.9. And Reece James is like 5 million. So that's a big difference in price. And Reece James, I would say, is now the number one choice. And I say that because in the Premier League, as Azpilicueta's fit, he could be playing now. James has started 6 of the first 8 games. The problem is there going to be those games where he gets rotated out for Azpilicueta? On the left-hand side, Chelsea still have options like Alonso and Emerson, but they're just not anywhere near as good. Whereas Azpilicueta, Frank can call on him to come in and do a job. He doesn't want to do that with Alonso and Emerson. So that is why Chilwell's probably worth the premium. But in terms of attacking threat and assist potential, Reece James is extremely good as well, if not as good as Chilwell. The one thing I would say about Chilwell, watching a few games now, especially with Ziyech in the Sheffield United game, constantly looking to ping balls over to the back post. Chilwell even mentioned it in post-match interview that Frank had told him to get on that back post. That's where his goal came from. We saw that in the previous match as well. He is the new Alonso, apart from he's actually probably a slightly better defender. Slightly is probably a bit harsh as well. And he's absolutely nailed on that Chelsea team. They're going to do well. So I really like Chilwell. Absolutely no reason to get rid of him. Justin's probably okay for a few more weeks. Ricardo's probably out till December, and I actually think not this week probably against Liverpool, but after that they have a pretty good run against. I think it's Fulham, Sheffield United, Brighton. So if there was a setback to Ricardo, Justin actually looks quite good. And I think maybe when Soyuncu is back, etc., and they've got Soyuncu, Evans, and Fofana who can all play in that back three, and then they've got Justin and Castagna when he's back as well, because Castagna's injured too. When they're all back, Justin will be back to right wing back probably, Castagna on the left, or vice versa. And that'll look pretty good until Ricardo's back. Once everyone is fit in that Leicester backline, you'd imagine Justin will drop out. So I think it's okay to hold on to him because a lot of people got him cheap, which is probably why they still own him. And until Ricardo's back, there's no reason to get rid of him. We've seen how good Leicester can be defensively. There's points there. He got points against Wolves. And like I said, some pretty good fixtures coming up. Longer term, out of all these, Justin will be the one that has to go. Probably then Trent. And Chilwell, honestly, that 27.6% ownership is only going to get higher and higher. Now, some people might have other fires to put out or other transfers they want to make, but that will start climbing to 30, 40, 50% if he keeps getting clean sheets and attacking returns over the next 3 to 4 games. So he will stay the highest owned defender for a while now, I would say. But yeah, the template's looking pretty good in terms of Chilwell and Martinez. The other two, probably not for very much longer. So I was about to say, coming into midfield, there's some very popular names, but of course they're popular. They're the 4 most owned midfielders in the game. So let's cross off some easy ones. Mo Salah, for me, he's not really put a foot wrong. I'll be honest, his underlying numbers are not actually that good. In terms of expected goal involvement, they're pretty decent overall. But a lot of that is being built from assist threat rather than goal threat. So his XG non-penalty is actually quite low, and a bit like Vardy, he's had quite a few penalties already this season. I think he scored 8 goals, I believe, off the top of my head, and I think 4 or maybe even 5 have come from penalties. So he's a little bit like Jamie Vardy in that regard. The thing is, I just don't see why those numbers would get worse. I can only see them getting better. And if you have a look from kind of game week 9 onwards, all the way over Christmas, right? And it is worth looking ahead at this point. It's always worth looking ahead, but especially at this stage of the season, because there's going to be a lot of games coming quickly in December, and you need to be able to plan ahead. And Salah is someone I've looked at quite a lot. There's a lot of fixtures from now until like game week 16, 17, 18, where I would captain Salah. So 100% he should still be in our teams, I think. 47.1% is probably quite low for Salah, given what he can do and what he has done this season. But I guess, again, with so many players to be buying, that you want to try and save some money from somewhere, and it's always viable to go without players. No player is essential, but for me, Salah is essential to my team, and I'm definitely not looking to get rid of him. Jack Grealish, I think, just looks like a great option. That ownership is only going to grow and grow when people look at Villa's fixtures. From now until about game week 14, 15, 16, the fixtures are extremely good. He's linking up well with Watkins. Barkley's doing well too. And he's just such an incredible talent. He's exciting to watch. He's very cheap as well. It's another reason why a lot of people are looking to bring him in. His assist potential, his goal threat is all there. And the numbers are all up from last year as well. I think he's already got 10 returns. And he only got, I think, 15 last year. So he's very close to getting what he got last year. And we've only had 8 game weeks so far. So I think he looks really good, and Villa in general looking decent. So for me, he would be, if I was building a wildcard team now, and I will do a wildcard draft video later on this week probably, Grealish 100% will be in there, and I think he looks really good, and absolutely no reason not to bring him in at the moment. The other two is a little bit different. So Zaha's next 3 fixtures are okay. I think it's Burnley, Newcastle, West Brom. So they're looking decent enough. And his ownership's high because of, obviously, what he did early on in the first few game weeks. Scored a few goals. He's on penalties. And then people saw his fixture run and wanted to get him in because of his price. So I think he's okay. Long-term pick, not for me. To be honest, I wouldn't have him in my wildcard team either right now. Next 3 fixtures are good. But the longer-term fixtures are better for Grealish. You've got Ziyech for a bit more money. I just think there's better options than Zaha. I'm not his biggest fan in terms of an FPL point of view because he always seems to look like he's going to do well and maybe even does do well, and then it drops off quite quickly. So not one for me, and that 29% ownership should probably drop quite heavily over the next few weeks. But if you already own him, then yeah, you probably keep him for the next 3 game weeks and then maybe look at moving him on after that. Son is probably the one out of all 4 of these who I'd say can probably be moved on the quickest. Interestingly, between him and Kane, Kane's underlying numbers are so much better. Not that Son's are bad, but Kane's are really good compared to Son. He's having almost, I think he might even be just slightly ahead in chance created now, but he's definitely higher for shots and shots in the box. Generally, expected goals, expected goal involvement. Kane is a lot better. For whatever reason, it's just not working for Son at the moment. And they're about to go into this fixture run that includes the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal and Man City and Man United. And it's tricky. And they got Wolves, and I think Leicester at the end of it as well. I think it's not a bad time to get rid of Son. A lot of people have said and will say these harder fixtures might play into their hands, right? They've got a bit more space to run in behind. We saw what Son did against Man United. I actually think Man United is not part of the difficult fixture run now I think of it. But there's a lot of tough fixtures in there. Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Leicester, Wolves, etc. And we saw them. Did really well against Man United, but Man United had a player sent off. Did really well against Southampton. For some reason, the tactics weren't changed during that game, even though it wasn't working from Southampton. But since then, the last few games, West Brom, Brighton, Burnley. Okay, he got his goal against Burnley. It was from a header from a corner that was flicked on by Kane. I can't imagine Son's the type of player that scored many headers from corners in his career so far, but maybe I got that wrong. Let me know in the comments below. So for me, nearly 60% ownership is probably not warranted, and I am looking to move him on. Who to? I'd be looking at Man City midfielders. I think they can still come good. Like, people will say they've not played well. I get that. But in terms of stuff like expected goals, for the last 4 games, City are very close to Spurs. And if you look at the fixture difference, like, Spurs' fixtures have been so good. All Man City need is those kind of fixtures as well. And they look really decent too. So stretch up to like De Bruyne or Sterling. You go Rashford, Bruno. You've got West Brom at home next. You go Ziyech. He looks extremely good. There's lots of options to move away from Son. I don't think he's necessarily must sell. Right? I don't think you have to like force him out of your team. I talk about that quite a bit, about trying to force players out. If you've got other transfers to do, just leave him in. He might get points. It's what he does. When he plays, he gets points. But you have to think over this fixture run. I'm going to say the same about Kane. The volume of FPL points is surely going to come down with the harder fixtures. It pretty much does for every player. They'd have to play extremely well for that not to happen. So 58.9% ownership. A lot of people will say it's a risk to get rid of him because he's so highly owned. Well, I would look at it as a good opportunity to get ahead of the crowd, while some people are still umming and ahhing about whether to get rid of him. Get rid of your 60% owned player, maybe bring in a 10, 15, 20% player and get ahead of the game. And I will just quickly say, I'm not one of those people that thinks you should go different for the sake of it, but for me, it's a good opportunity to go a bit different and maybe even ignore the ownership and just get the player you want in instead, and then you'll soon see they're lower owned anyway without even picking that player because of ownership. So for me, Son can go. I wouldn't have Zaha, but okay, next 3 are fine. Salah and Grealish looking great. So adding in the forwards then to make the full squad, I actually own 2 of these players already, so Calvert-Lewin and Kane. I don't own Bamford, right? A lot of people who've been watching this channel for a while will have heard me talk about him before, and I do find it funny that you're not allowed to get things wrong or you're not allowed to change your opinion. And I did get it wrong with Bamford, right? And I think anyone watching this channel thinking that I'm going to get everything right is absolutely deluded, or they haven't been watching for long enough. But yeah, Bamford, I did get it wrong. I didn't think you could keep this up, and it looks like he is going to. Funnily enough, a lot of the Leeds fans that I follow, who are kind of pro Leeds defence, etc., they're still not sure about Bamford. I still see them talking about bringing in cheap strikers, and they're looking at Watkins or Antonio if he's fit, and Bamford's not really on the list still, which I find quite intriguing, to be honest. But there's no denying that his underlying numbers are so good. Like his non-penalty expected goals, I believe, are the highest in the league, right? Higher than Kane, higher than Salah, higher than Calvert-Lewin even. Only just, by the way, but still, that's impressive for his price. For me, like I still look at fixtures, and the next few fixtures are not ideal. They're not awful maybe, but they're not ideal. And I'd be looking at Bamford from game week 12. But obviously, if you've already got him, no one's selling him. And if you're looking at bringing in a cheap striker, okay, Watkins and Antonio, if they're both fit, have got better fixtures. But for a long-term hold, maybe you do just put Bamford in. And in hindsight, one of the things that maybe we got wrong was last year we looked at the Championship expected goals. And I think Bamford was like 24 expected goals, which is pretty damn good for the amount of games they played. And he missed a lot of chances. Maybe we should have been saying, well, a bit like Che Adams this year. He had the numbers, he just didn't quite convert into goals. Maybe it will this year, and bam. I mean, that's easy to say in hindsight, I get it. But it does look like he's going to keep getting chances. Leeds are going to create a lot of shots in the box, and a lot of them are falling to Bamford. You go to shots in the box for all attackers so far this season, he is right up there. I believe he might even be top. So he looks like a great option. Again, wouldn't sell him. Maybe wouldn't buy him just yet, but from game week 12, I really like the look of him. And to be honest, I think there's even an argument just to put him in your team now if you need a striker change. Because he probably will keep this up the way he's going. Maybe not as many goals as he scored in as many game weeks, but I think he's going to be consistent enough to be worth it for that price versus a Watkins and Antonio Morpay or whoever it might be. The other two, Calvert-Lewin, look, I've seen people talk about getting rid of him. I don't think you can get rid for the next 3 fixtures, right? Fulham especially next up. You want to keep him. After the next 3, it does get pretty tricky, and that will come a time where we have to think about maybe getting rid of him. The problem is a lot of us got him at 7 million. So he's gone up quite heavily in price. So it costs a lot to sell him. But I'd still be tempted to sell him if maybe the move was right or I had a spare transfer or Everton weren't looking good. But what I would say is he's managed to keep up his returns even though they've had a lot of suspensions or injuries. Right, next week when they play Fulham, they're pretty much going to have a full-strength squad. We saw him put 5 goals against West Brom. No reason why they can't put 3 or 4 against Fulham. So I think he's still looking like a great hold. Would I buy him now? I think I probably would if I had a striker change, at least for the next 3, and then reassess. And the thing is, if you buy him now, you're not locked into this. Well, I bought him at 7, he's gone up so much. You buy him now, get 3 fixtures. If you need to move him on, you just move him on and bring him in again when you need to. He's only going to keep going up in price if he absolutely smashes it over the next 3. And then, okay, maybe you look to hold on to him. But getting on players late sometimes is actually beneficial. Not obviously you've missed the points, but you find it easier to get rid, whereas people like me won't. But he's looked really good, and Everton are going to be back to pretty much full strength next week. Kane is another one who I would probably look at moving on. The only thing I'm a little bit more concerned about moving Kane on than Son. Now, it's easier to hold Son because he's cheaper, but Kane's underlying numbers are so much better. Like he's almost doubling the amount of shots, doubling the amount of shots in the box. His numbers are like on par with like what a good Salah would be most of the time. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of getting rid of Kane, but then I'm telling myself, if this was Salah with his numbers, with these fixtures, would I get rid of him? I don't know if I would. The only difference is this season I did tell myself if I needed to get rid of the likes of Salah to get someone else in for captaincy, I would. But for me, Salah's fixtures are okay over Christmas, Kane's are not. And so Kane is my make weight to go and get City players in, for example. So I think Kane's a really tough one if you own him. I can see why people are looking to keep because the numbers are good and that they think that form over fixtures. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking how much of that form came with the good fixtures they've had, right? Like people seem to overlook that they're not just in form; they've had really good fixtures. And they're about to come into a tough run. He could be Jesus while Aguero's out. He could be Jamie Vardy, who's got Fulham at home in Game Week 10. You could go down to a cheap forward and put that money into midfield and get Man City players in, whatever it might be, if you think that they're going to come good with the good fixtures. So, again, a bit like Son, I don't think Kane is necessarily must sell, but 45% ownership feels to me like a good time to bet against because of the fixtures. It could go horribly wrong, and if it does, then that ownership is going to hurt. But for that much money, I just feel like there's maybe better places to put it and try and get ahead of the crowd once more. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like. Hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. Let's try and hit that 120k by the end of the day, preferably, if not the end of the week. I'll be back with more videos as well this week, so make sure you do hit that button. I have kind of fixture video, wildcard drafts, that kind of thing. If you've got any ideas for videos that you'd like to see over the next few days, please do leave me a comment below. I've got some ideas like I've just said. If there's anything else, leave a comment below and I'll see if I can get around to it, because there are a few days days until I get back to the watch list, the team selection, the game week preview, and all that stuff next week. The only thing to say, if you haven't already donated to Movember and you want to, there's a link in the description below. There's also a link to Patreon if you want to sign up there, support me and the channel a little bit further. I'll be doing a Patreon live stream tomorrow as part of the Q&A videos that I do over there. There's Slack access, WhatsApp access, early team reveals, that kind of thing. So if you want to check it out, link in the description below. And everyone that signs up goes on to the Legends Wall. Everyone in blue has been signed up for at least a year already. But big thanks to anyone that's ever supported or currently is as well. So big shout out to everyone there. And if you want to sign up, link in the description below. There's links to everything there if you want to follow me on social media, etc. I'll leave this video there because it's been long enough. Let me know what you think about the template players, which one should go, which one should stay, and which ones should still be bought. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you tomorrow for another video.